Good day everyone, I am Hazel Mendoza. Today we are going to present to you the circumstances that led to Rizal's change in perspective towards the Spanish rule. In the first section of Module 5, it discusses the other works of Rizal after publishing his first novel, which is the Noli Me Tangere. These works are the Sobre la Indolencia de los Filipinos and Los Agricultores Filipinos. These essays critique the Spaniards' accusation that Filipinos were indolent or lazy. We are all familiar to the folktale character Juan Tamad. Many Filipinos would use to call a person Juan Tamad if he or she is seen to be very lazy. Rizal admitted that indolence does exist to us Filipinos. Rizal became an active contributor to the bi-weekly newspaper La Solidaridad after publishing his first novel, Noli Me Tangere. So just to recall on what is La Solidaridad. In 1888, Rizal joined La Solidaridad, an organization composed of Filipino liberals exiled in Spain. The organization aimed to raise awareness of Spain on the needs of its colony, which is the Philippines. Rizal wrote 2 essays that was published on the newspaper, and these were Los Agricultores Filipinos in 1889 and Sobre la Indolencia de los Filipinos in 1890. Los Agricultores Filipinos, or the Filipino Farmers, is an essay written by Dr. Rizal that was dated on March 25, 1899. It was the first article of Rizal published in La Solidaridad. Rizal commended the intention of the Spanish colonizers to develop agriculture in the Philippines as a means to social and economic advancement. In this writing, he depicted the deplorable conditions of the Filipino farmers in the Philippines, hence the backwardness of the country. It is all about Filipino farmers, specifically those from Laguna and their experienced struggle, discrimination, and injustices from Spanish government officials and Guardia Civil. While he was in exile in Dapitan, Rizal dedicated much of his time tending the farm he bought in Talisay. He used modern agricultural methods he observed in his travels in Europe. He also urged the farmers in Dapitan to use fertilizers and farm machines to maximize the use of their lands. Rizal addressed this essay to the Minister of Colonies and Spanish authorities. The primary purpose of this letter or article was to cite government's faculty organizations and use of power, and also to propose a reform that will favor the rights and welfare of Filipino farmers in Laguna. For it has brought to his attention the problem of banditry and thievery in rural farms. The colonial guards themselves were incapable in providing adequate protection to the farmers and their farmlands. So, Rizal urged the farmers to equip themselves with a gun as a defense against lawless elements, as well as the problem of abusive colonial policies such as polo y servicio that minimize the productivity of farmers. He then demanded the Ministry of Colonies urgent solutions to these problems. Next was Sobre la Indolencia de los Filipinos. Sobre la Indolencia de los Filipinos is an essay which explains the causes why the Filipinos did not, as we said, work hard during the Spanish regime. In this essay, Rizal acknowledged Gregorio Sanciano's El Progreso de Filipinas in 1881 and recognized the evident indolence of the Filipinos. Rizal pointed out that long before the Spaniards came, the Filipinos were industrious and hard-working. The Spanish reign brought about a decline in economic activities because of certain causes, one of which is due to the tropical climate in the country. Spain extinguished the natives' love of work because of the implementation of forced labor or polo y servicio that required Filipino males aged 16 to 60 to forced labor for 40-day period. Because of the wars between Spain and other countries in Europe, as well as the Muslims in Mindanao, the Filipinos were compelled to work in shipyards, roads, and other public works, abandoning agriculture, industry, and commerce. Another is that Spain did not protect the people against foreign invaders and pirates. With no arms to defend themselves, the natives were killed, their houses burned, and their lands destroyed. As a result of this, the Filipinos were forced to become nomads, lost interest in cultivating their lands or in rebuilding the industries that were shut down, and simply became submissive to the mercy of God. Another is the Spanish authorities were a bad example to despise manual labor. The official reported to work at noon and left early, all the while doing nothing in line with their duties. The women were seen constantly followed by servants who dressed them and fanned them. The Filipinos were paying taxes that were extremely high, so much that a portion of what they earned went to the government or to the friars. When the object of their labor was removed and they were exploited, they were reduced to inaction. The productivity of the Filipinos were gauged through whether they served the purpose to the Spaniards. Filipinos were tagged indolent once they showed any disagreement or resistance to what was being asked of them. So, for Rizal, indolence can be ultimately be traced to the abuse and discrimination experienced by the Filipinos under the Spanish rule, which led to the deterioration of Filipino values. He then pointed out in his essay that it was imperative to study the causes of such indolence so that a proper solution could be conceptualized. In his essay, Rizal linked two factors to the indolence of the Filipinos. First was the limited training and education provided to the Filipinos, for the Spanish government feared possible insubordination and retaliation. Second was the lack of national sentiment of unity among Filipinos, caused by the stigma that Filipino culture was inferior to foreign culture, which compelled humble submission. With these factors, Rizal then concluded that the solution to the Filipino indolence was education and liberty from oppression.
Hi, my name is CARRANCEJA and I'm going to talk about Module 5, Section 2, Rizal's Abandonment of Assimilation. So, first of the topic is the New Calamba Community. So, it all started when in Hong Kong, Rizal planned an agreement with Governor General Eulahia Despujol. So, Rizal, with the help of the North Borneo Company, offered an agreement with the evicted farmers from Calamba, Laguna. They offered permanent settlement for the emigrants and the sale of or lease of lands for 999 years, in which a new Filipino settlement will be officially established in North Borneo, free from all forms of control of the Spaniards. However, the deal was rejected by the Government General Eulahia Despujol. Next is the Filipinos losing hope and interest in the campaign. Filipinos believed that campaigns were futile, in which campaigns made by the ilustrados and propagandists were incapable of producing practical results, which made the Filipinos hopeless and uninterested. So Filipino in Spain also lost motivation, making them decide to partake in more active campaigns against Spain. Some who were abroad were having issues with one another, which they saw as a big wall or hindrance for them to create and systematically plan and utilize their actions. So lastly is the withdrawal of Graciano Lopez Jaina and Jose Rizal from La Solidaridad. It was all caused by the disagreement and differences in ideals and aspirations. It all rooted when Marcelo H. Del Pilar became the owner and chief editor of the La Solidaridad, which was an organization created in Spain on December 13, 1888, composed of Filipino liberals exiled in 1872 and students attending European universities. The organization aimed to increase Spanish awareness of the needs of its colony, the Philippines, and to propagate a close relationship between the Philippines and Spain, in which Marcelo H. Del Pilar's ways of running La Solidaridad contradicts the values, ideals, aspirations, and core vision of Jose Rizal. So Jose Rizal and Graciano Lopez Jaena both left Marcelo H. Del Pilar to single-handedly manage La Solidaridad. So many believe that it would be better to be part of a new organization with members united towards one goal.
Hi, my name is Alfredo Pagulong, and my report is about the representation of the Philippines in Spanish Cortes. The Philippines experienced first period of representation in the Spanish Cortes from 1810 to 1813. Our first Philippine delegate is Ventura de los Reyes. The second and third period of representation were not fruitful or beneficial for the welfare of the colony. The representation of the overseas colonies in the Spanish Cortes was abolished in 1837. Since then, the Philippines' condition worsened. Graciano Lopez Jaena and his compatriots plead fervently for the representation in the Spanish Cortes, but they were just ignored. After the representation of the Filipinos in Spanish Cortes, which received lack of commitment in Spanish government, on the other hand, Rizal was facing another crisis, and this crisis is the trouble that the Filipino hacienderos in Calamba was facing. During this time, Rizal was planning on going back home here in the Philippines because he believes that education is the key, and he wants to devote himself into teaching. He even stopped writing in La Solidaridad because he wants to finish his sequel in his Noli Me Tangere. His real intention was to really go home, but he had a second thought when he found out through his friend Ponce. And that the Committee de Propaganda in the Manila was planning on pensioning him in order for him to work in Madrid. But that is just not the reason. Another reason is he received a new power of attorney for the persecution in Calamba from his brother Fasciano, and this was brought in Spain by Serrano. True, he was the one who handled this problem, and he even gave it to the Supreme Court in the Spain. Del Pilar and Gomez had a protest to the overseas minister named conservative Antonio Fabie against the problem in Calamba. This problem became a talk in Madrid. In fact, newspapers wrote article about it. Through that, he had a chance to go home, but Rizal stayed because he wanted to meet the relationship of Filipino Madrid, a close knit. But Rizal said that the campaign for Filipino rights will never be achieved because most Filipino students who are studying in Madrid was more serious in gambling and their women rather than raising the concern of their country. And this means that the Philippines is lack of representatives in Spanish Cortes. Additionally, the persecution in Calamba was denied in the Supreme Court. So he really said that campaign for Filipino rights will not be achieved. He even replied to the Blumentritz peaceful revolution in the Philippines through a letter in 1887. He said, Philippines will never gain its independence. He also said that he never really wanted separation from Spain and did not want independence because he knew that his country cannot stand on his own, which is the Philippines. All he wanted is fair treatment, care, better instruction, and good security and enough property for Filipinos. Because he knew that Spanish will always win. And he even said that regardless of what the Filipinos will fight for in Madrid, the Spaniards will never listen to their concern. Even though the Philippines get what it wants, the Spaniards will surely rule through justice, not through prestige. He showed his opinion regarding the campaign to the writing of his novel El Filibusterismo. El, Fili- El Fili was the sequel of Noli Me Tangere. If you want to know more about it, you should read El Fili. Another is the situation between Rizal and Del Pilar and other Filipinos in Madrid was complicated. The problem about the imprisonment of his mother and sister, this imprisonment was done because a letter was found by the Dominicans in the bag of his sister. And maybe this triggered him to go back here in the Philippines. And he wrote a letter in 1891 that if our countrymen hope in us here in the Europe, they are certainly mistaken. The field of the battle is in the Philippines. There is where we should be. Then the La Liga Filipina. Upon the arrival of Rizal in the Philippines, he established a new organization named La Liga Filipina. It is a secret society that embodied the ideas of Rizal revealed in El Filibusterismo. This calls the provision of mutual protection, defense against all injustice, and promotion of instruction and education among Filipinos. And that's it for the report.